Muhammad led Khadija's trading caravan to Syria, and the journey was a remarkable success. He returned with profits that exceeded anything her previous agents had achieved. But what caught Khadija's attention even more than the profits was the report of her servant, Seerah, who had accompanied Muhammad on the journey. Seerah spoke of Muhammad's honesty, his calm demeanor, his fairness with everyone they dealt with. He also mentioned something unusual, that on several occasions he had seen a cloud seem to hover over Muhammad, shielding him from the desert sun. Strange, perhaps, but Seerah was certain of what he saw. Khadija, who was already a woman of deep spiritual inclination, was moved by these accounts. She had been approached by many men for marriage, wealthy, powerful men, and had turned them all down. But something about Muhammad was different. She was around 40 years old. He was 25. By the social conventions of Mecca, she was older and wealthier, but Khadija was not a woman who followed convention blindly. Through a mutual friend, she proposed marriage to Muhammad. He accepted, and so began one of the greatest love stories in human history. They were married, and for the next 25 years, until Khadija's death, Muhammad would take no other wife. She was his confidant, his partner, his greatest supporter. In the years of hardship that lay ahead, she would be his anchor. Some years after his marriage, an event occurred in Mecca that brought Muhammad into the spotlight in a remarkable way, not as a prophet, but as a peacemaker. The Kaaba, the ancient cube-shaped structure at the center of Mecca, had been damaged by floods. The Quraysh tribes decided to rebuild it. Different clans were assigned to rebuild different sections of the structure. The construction went smoothly until they reached the moment of placing the black stone, the Hajar al-Aswad, back into its sacred corner. The black stone was considered deeply sacred. Every tribe wanted the honor of placing it. Tensions rose, arguments turned heated, old rivalries flared. The situation threatened to turn violent. A war could have erupted right there in the holiest place in Arabia. The leaders agreed to a creative solution. They would wait for the next man to enter the Kaaba's courtyard and let him decide. And the next man who walked in was Muhammad. When the crowd saw it was him, a wave of relief washed over them. Al-Amin has come, they said. We will accept whatever judgment he gives. Muhammad asked for a large cloth to be brought. He placed the black stone at the center of it. Then he asked one elder from each of the tribes present to take hold of a corner or edge of the cloth. Together, all the tribes, they lifted the stone to the correct height. Then Muhammad himself placed it into position with his own hands. Every tribe had shared in the honor. The conflict dissolved. A crisis that could have cost hundreds of lives was resolved by the quiet wisdom of a 35-year-old merchant. Abu Talib was not a wealthy man. He had many children of his own and limited resources. Yet he took his orphan nephew Muhammad into his home and treated him with genuine love and affection. This kindness between uncle and nephew would define one of the most enduring loyalties in history. As Muhammad grew older, he began helping his uncle. He tended sheep and goats in the hills around Mecca, a humble profession, but one shared by many great prophets before him, including Moses and David. The open hills, the silent stars, the vast landscape, all of this shaped the young man's character, filling him with a sense of wonder, patience, and deep reflection. Then, when Muhammad was around 12 years old, Abu Talib decided to take him along on a trading caravan to Syria. This was Muhammad's first major journey beyond Arabia, and it was on this journey that something remarkable occurred. As the caravan passed through the town of Busra in present-day Syria, they were met by a Christian monk named Bahira. Bahira had spent years studying ancient religious texts that spoke of a coming prophet. When he saw the young Muhammad, he was struck with recognition. He noticed a distinctive mark between the boy's shoulders, described in those texts as the seal of prophethood. Bahira pulled Abu Talib aside and said, "Take care of this boy. Great things are destined for him. Take him back to his homeland and protect him well." Abu Talib heeded the warning. They turned back and returned to Mecca. As Muhammad grew into a young man, the people of Mecca took notice of something unusual about him. In a city full of merchants who schemed, cheated, and lied, this young man was relentlessly honest.
He never cheated in trade. He never broke a promise. He never spoke badly of people behind their backs. He was known throughout Mecca by two titles that the community had given him naturally, without any ceremony: Al-Amin, the trustworthy, and Al-Sadiq, the truthful. This was no small distinction. In a society where business disputes were common and deception in trade was almost expected, Muhammad stood out as a man of extraordinary integrity. Word of his character spread through the trading circles of Mecca, and it eventually reached the ears of a remarkable woman, a wealthy, intelligent, and respected widow named Khadija bin Khuwaylid. Khadija was one of the most successful merchants in all of Mecca. She ran trading caravans to Syria and beyond. She needed capable, trustworthy agents to manage her business journeys, and she had heard too many good things about the young Muhammad to ignore him. She hired him to lead one of her caravans to Syria. He accepted, and what followed would change both of their lives forever.
While still living with his foster mother Halima, a remarkable event is recorded in Islamic tradition. One day, while the young Muhammad was playing with other children in the fields, two men dressed in white appeared beside him. They gently laid him down on the ground and, according to the narration, opened his chest, removed something dark from his heart, washed his heart in a golden basin filled with snow, and then returned it to its place. The other children ran in fear. Halima and her husband rushed to the boy and found him standing, pale but unharmed. When asked what had happened, he described what he had seen. Though frightened by this strange event, Halima noticed that the boy remained calm, unusually calm for a child his age. Shortly after, Halima decided to return Muhammad to his mother in Mecca. And so the young boy, now around 4 or 5 years old, came back to the city where he was born, back to Amina, his mother, who embraced him with tears of joy. He had spent his first formative years in the desert, under the open sky, tending animals and learning the language of the Arabs. He was being prepared, though no one knew it yet, for something far greater. Tragedy would visit the young Muhammad again and again in his early years, as if life was forging him in the fires of loss, teaching him the meaning of patience before he would one day teach it to the world. When Muhammad was around 6 years old, his mother Amina decided to take him on a journey north to Medina to visit the graves of his father's family and to strengthen family bonds. It was a long journey through the desert, and young Muhammad experienced the beauty of his father's homeland for the first time. But on the return journey, Amina fell gravely ill. She grew weaker with every passing mile, and just as they reached a small village called Abwa, she passed away. The 6-year-old Muhammad stood beside his mother's grave, now fully an orphan. He was taken back to Mecca by the family servant, Ayman, a woman who would remain devoted to him for the rest of her life. He came home to the care of his grandfather, Abd al-Muttalib, a man of great dignity and stature, deeply loved in Mecca. The old man wrapped his grandson in love and gave him a place beside him at every gathering. But this comfort too was short-lived. Just 2 years later, Abd al-Muttalib also died, leaving the 8-year-old boy in the care of his uncle, Abu Talib. Muhammad was now an orphan 3 times over, having lost his father, his mother, and now his grandfather. Yet with each loss, something deeper was being built within him. The year was approximately 570 CE, the year of the elephant, as the Arabs called it. That very year, a powerful Yemeni king named Abraha had marched toward Mecca with a massive army and elephants, intending to destroy the Kaaba. According to historical accounts, the army was miraculously repelled before ever reaching the city. In this same momentous year, in a small house in Mecca, a child came into the world. His father, Abdullah ibn Abdal al-Muttalib, had died just months before his birth, making the child an orphan even before he could open his eyes. His mother was Amina bint Wahb, a woman known for her nobility and gentle character. The child was born on the 12th of Rabi al-Awwal, a Monday. His grandfather, Abd al-Muttalib, carried the newborn to the Kaaba and gave him a name that was rare among the Arabs at the time, Muhammad, meaning the praised one. No one in Mecca could have predicted that this quiet, fatherless child would one day be spoken of in every corner of the earth. Among the customs of noble Arab families in Mecca was a beautiful tradition, sending newborn children to the desert to be raised by Bedouin foster mothers. The fresh desert air, the open land, and the pure Arabic dialect spoken by the Bedouin tribes were believed to make children stronger, healthier, and more eloquent. And so the infant Muhammad was entrusted to a woman named Halima al-Sa'diyah from the tribe of Banu Sa'd. Halima later recalled that before she accepted the child, she had been having a difficult year. Her own baby was underweight, her camel barely produced milk, and her tribe was suffering from drought. But from the moment she took the infant Muhammad into her care, everything seemed to change. Her milk increased, her animals grew healthier, rain fell on her land, her family prospered. She kept little Muhammad for 4 years in the desert. He grew up strong and healthy, playing among the sheep and breathing the clean air of the open plains. He learned the purest, most eloquent form of Arabic, a gift that would later make him one of the greatest orators in history. Those early years in the desert shaped him in ways that would echo through his entire life. 1400 years ago, in the scorching deserts of Arabia, a man was born who would go on to change the course of human history forever. He was born an orphan. He never attended a school. He never commanded an army until he was in his 50s. Yet, within just 23 years, he united warring tribes, ended centuries of idol worship, and built a civilization that would span 3 continents. His name was Muhammad, the son of Abdallah of the tribe of Quraysh, and this is his story. Welcome to Global Legends Studio, and before we begin this incredible journey, make sure you subscribe to this channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss a single part of this series. Now, let's go back to the year 570 CE, to the city of Mecca. To understand the magnitude of what Muhammad, peace be upon him, would accomplish, we must first understand the world he was born into. Arabia in the 6th century was a land of extremes. Vast golden deserts stretched endlessly in every direction, scorching heat by day, freezing cold by night. The Arabian Peninsula was home to hundreds of competing tribes, and these tribes were almost constantly at war with one another. Blood feuds could last for generations. Women had few rights. The poor were enslaved. Baby girls were sometimes buried alive. In the center of this harsh land lay a city that was already ancient, Mecca. Even in those days, Mecca was a major trading hub. Caravans carrying silk, spices, gold, and leather passed through its dusty streets. Merchants from Yemen, Syria, Persia, and Egypt gathered there. But Mecca was also a religious center. At its heart stood a cube-shaped structure called the Kaaba, and around it were placed over 360 idols worshipped by the Arab tribes. People came from all over Arabia to trade and to worship. The guardians of the Kaaba were the powerful Quraysh tribe, and among them was a man named Abdallah ibn Abd al-Muttalib. It was into this family, this tribe, this city, that the Prophet would be born.
The 10th year of the prophethood, 619 CE, is remembered in Islamic history as al-Huzn, the year of sorrow. Within just a few months of each other, Muhammad lost the 2 people who had been his greatest sources of support and protection in this world. First, his uncle Abu Talib fell ill. Despite never formally accepting Islam himself, Abu Talib had been Muhammad's shield for 10 years, using his tribal authority to protect his nephew from the worst of the Quraysh's plans. As he lay dying, the leaders of Quraysh came to his bedside. They begged him to rein in his nephew. Muhammad came too, and quietly asked his uncle to say the words of faith. Abu Talib could not bring himself to do it. He died as he had lived, as a follower of the tradition of his ancestors. Muhammad grieved deeply for him. And with Abu Talib gone, the protection he had enjoyed within Meccan tribal politics was suddenly stripped away. And then, just weeks later, Khadija died. She had been his partner for 25 years, his first believer, his comfort in every difficulty, the woman who had wrapped him in a garment when he came trembling down from the cave, the woman who had given him children, companionship, and unwavering love. Muhammad was heartbroken. He never forgot her.
Years later, long after her death, he would still speak of her with such tenderness that it sometimes drew questions from his later wives. He would say, "She believed in me when no one else did. She helped me when no one else would." The year of sorrow was real and heavy, but what followed would show the world that even grief cannot stop a mission ordained by God. With Abu Talib gone, Muhammad's position in Mecca became dangerously precarious. He needed to find new allies, new places where his message could take root. He decided to travel to the city of Taif, a prosperous town about 60 miles southeast of Mecca, nestled in the cool mountains. He walked to Taif on foot, with only his adopted son and freed slave Zayd ibn Haritha for company. When he arrived, he sought an audience with the leaders of Taif, the 3 brothers of the Thaqif tribe who held power there. Their reception was humiliating. They mocked him, they told him to leave, and as he departed their city, they set the children and slaves of the streets upon him, throwing stones at his heels until blood ran from his feet and soaked into his sandals. Muhammad and Zayd took shelter in a garden outside the city walls. There, exhausted and wounded, Muhammad raised his hands to God in one of the most moving prayers in Islamic history. "O Allah, to you I complain of my weakness and helplessness. You are the Lord of the weak, and you are my Lord. If you are not angry with me, I do not care about anything else, but your mercy is broader than anything that could befall me." Then something extraordinary happened. An angel appeared, Gabriel, with the angel of the mountains. Gabriel asked, "Would you like me to ask the angel of these mountains to crush the people of Taif between their 2 mountains?" Muhammad's answer revealed everything about his character. "No, for perhaps from their children will come those who will worship God alone." He would not take revenge. He would not give up. He walked back toward Mecca and kept going.
When mockery and negotiation failed, the leaders of Quraysh turned to something far darker: brutal persecution. The wealthy and powerful among the early Muslims had some protection. Their tribal affiliations shielded them from the worst. But the poor, the freed slaves, the weak, they had no such protection, and it was on them that the Quraysh unleashed their fury. Bilal ibn Rabah, an Ethiopian slave, became one of the most famous examples. His master, Umayyah ibn Khalaf, would drag Bilal into the scorching Meccan desert during the hottest hours of the day. He would lay him flat on the burning sand and place a massive rock on his chest, trying to force him to renounce his faith. But Bilal would only say one thing over and over: Ahad, Ahad, meaning God is one. He was later freed when Abu Bakr purchased him and set him free, one of the most moving acts of early Islamic history. Others were not so fortunate initially. Families were torn apart, Muslims were imprisoned, beaten, starved. Some were killed for their faith. Sumayya bint Kabat became the first martyr of Islam, killed by Abu Jahl with a spear when she refused to renounce her beliefs. Yet none of this stopped the message from spreading. In fact, the courage of these early believers under extreme pressure only made others more curious about what they believed in so deeply. By the 5th year of the mission, the persecution had become unbearable for many of the early Muslims, especially those without tribal protection. Muhammad looked for a solution, and he found it across the Red Sea. To the west, across the water, lay the kingdom of Abyssinia, present-day Ethiopia, ruled by a Christian king known as the Negus, or Ashama ibn Abjar. By every account, the Negus was known as a just and righteous ruler, a man who would not allow injustice to be done in his kingdom, regardless of a person's religion. Muhammad told a group of his followers, "If you go to Abyssinia, you will find a king there under whom no one is wronged. It is a land of truthfulness. Stay there until God provides relief." And so, in the 5th year of the mission, a group of Muslims, initially 11 men and 4 women, quietly slipped out of Mecca and sailed across the Red Sea to Abyssinia. This was the first hijrah, the first migration in Islamic history. The Quraysh were furious. They sent 2 of their most capable diplomats to the Negus with gifts, demanding that the refugees be returned. The Negus called the Muslims to his court and asked them to explain their religion.
Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, the spokesperson for the Muslims, stood before the king and recited from the Quran verses about Mary, mother of Jesus. The Negus listened, his eyes filled with tears. He picked up a small stick from the ground and said, "The difference between what you have brought and what we believe about Jesus is no more than the width of this stick." He refused to hand the Muslims over. They were safe.
For the first 3 years of his mission, Muhammad did not preach publicly. The message was shared quietly, person by person, in homes, in private conversations. And the people who came to believe first tell us something profound about the nature of this message. Khadija, his wife, was the first. Ali ibn Abi Talib, his young cousin, a teenager living in his home, was the first male to believe. Zayd ibn Haritha, a freed slave who had become like a son to Muhammad, was another early believer. And then, perhaps most significant for what it tells us about the religion's power, Abu Bakr, Muhammad's closest and most respected friend. Abu Bakr was a successful businessman, respected by everyone in Mecca. When Muhammad told him about the revelation, Abu Bakr did not hesitate for a single moment. He believed, and he immediately began bringing others to the faith. Through Abu Bakr came some of the greatest names in early Islamic history: Uthman ibn Affan, Talha, Zubair, Abdul-Rahman ibn Auf, and others. These early believers were a diverse group: men, women, the elderly, the young, the wealthy, and the poor. Among them were former slaves, members of noble families, and ordinary workers. The message of one God, of justice, of the equality of all human beings, regardless of race or class, it resonated with the people who had long been crushed by the tribal system of Arabia. 3 years after the first revelation, the command came: go public. Muhammad climbed a hill called Al-Safa in the center of Mecca. In the Arab tradition, someone standing on Al-Safa was about to make a public announcement of great importance. A crowd gathered, merchants, tribesmen, leaders of the Quraysh. Muhammad called out, "If I told you that an army was approaching from behind these hills, would you believe me?" "Yes," they answered without hesitation. "You are Al-Amin, the trustworthy one. We have never heard you lie." "Then I am warning you," he said, "of a severe punishment that is coming. Say, there is no God but Allah, and you will succeed." Silence. Then one voice broke it, his own uncle, Abu Lahab. "Curse you, is this why you gathered us here?" And with that, the opposition began. The leaders of Quraysh were alarmed, not just for religious reasons, but for economic ones. Mecca's power was built on being the center of Arab idol worship. If Muhammad's message spread, it threatened everything they had: their income, their status, their way of life. They began mocking him. They called him a madman, a poet, a sorcerer. They called his followers names. They tried to bribe him with wealth and power. They tried to negotiate. They tried to threaten. Muhammad was unmoved. He continued to preach. As Muhammad approached his 40th year, something was changing within him. He began spending longer and longer periods in quiet meditation. The noise of Mecca, the idol worship, the injustice, the greed weighed heavily on him. He felt a pull towards solitude and reflection. Just outside Mecca stood a mountain called Jabal al-Nur, the Mountain of Light. Near its summit was a small cave called Hira. Muhammad would take provisions and climb up to this cave, sometimes staying for days at a time, simply thinking, praying, contemplating the deep questions of existence. Then came the night that would change everything. It was the month of Ramadan in the year 610 CE. Muhammad was 40 years old, alone in the cave, when a presence filled the small space around him. He felt an overwhelming force. Later, he would describe it as an angel who commanded him with a single word: Iqra, read, or in some translations, recite. Muhammad was overwhelmed with fear. "I cannot read," he said. The presence held him, squeezed him until he thought he could not breathe, and released him. Again, Iqra. Again, "I cannot read." Again, the embrace, tighter than before. And then, Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. Recite in the name of your Lord who created man from a clinging substance. Recite
and your Lord is the most generous, who taught by the pen, taught man that which he knew not. The first verses of the Quran had been revealed. The mission had begun. Muhammad descended the mountain trembling. Muhammad ran home. He was shaking, overwhelmed, frightened, unsure of what had just happened to him. He reached Khadija and cried out, "Cover me, cover me." She wrapped him in a garment and held him close. She listened as he told her everything, the presence in the cave, the words, the fear. When he finished, he said to her, "I fear for myself." But Khadija, calm, steady, wise, looked at her husband and said something that history has never forgotten. "Never. By God, he will never disgrace you. You maintain family ties, you speak the truth, you help the poor, you are generous to guests, you assist those who face calamities." She believed him immediately, without hesitation, without doubt. Khadija was the first person on earth to believe in the prophethood of Muhammad, and she would remain one of his most devoted supporters until her dying breath. She took him to her cousin, a learned Christian man named Waraka ibn Nawfal, who had studied the ancient scriptures. When Waraka heard the account, he recognized immediately what it meant. "This is the same angel, the Namus, who came to Moses," he said. "Muhammad, you are the prophet of this nation. I wish I were young enough to see the day when your people drive you out." "Will they drive me out?" Muhammad asked, astonished. "Yes," said Waraka sadly. "No prophet has ever come without being opposed."
In the 6th year after the Hijrah, Muhammad had a dream, a vision of himself and his companions entering the sacred city of Mecca peacefully, performing the pilgrimage. He took this as a divine sign and set out with approximately 1,400 unarmed Muslims intending to perform the Umrah, the lesser pilgrimage. The Quraysh were alarmed. They sent armed riders to block the way. Muhammad was forced to make camp at a place called Hudaybiyah on the outskirts of Mecca. Negotiations began. After long deliberations, a treaty was drafted. To many of the Muslims, the terms seemed deeply unfair. They would return to Medina this year without performing the pilgrimage. Any Muslim who fled from Mecca to Medina would be returned to Mecca. The two sides would have a 10-year truce. Some companions were visibly upset. Omar ibn al-Khattab, one of the most passionate of Muhammad's followers, was outraged. "Are we not upon the truth?" he demanded. "Then why do we accept these humiliating terms?" Muhammad was calm. He trusted in something beyond immediate appearances. The Quran would later describe this treaty as a clear victory. Why? Because the truce opened the door to peaceful communication. Tribes began meeting freely. The message spread. Within 2 years, more people had entered Islam than in the previous 18 years combined. Muhammad had played the long game and won it. The Peace of Hudaybiyah was one of the greatest strategic decisions in his entire mission. After the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, Muhammad did something extraordinary. He sent letters, personally sealed with a signet ring, to the rulers of the most powerful empires and kingdoms of his time. He wrote to Heraclius, emperor of the Byzantine Empire, to Khosrow II, emperor of the Sassanid Persian Empire, to the Negus of Abyssinia, to the Muqawqis, ruler of Egypt, to the chiefs of Bahrain, Oman, and Yemen. The letters were all similar in their message. "Peace be upon the one who follows guidance. I call you to Islam. Submit to God, and you will be safe. If you refuse, then upon you will be the sin of your people." The responses varied. Heraclius reportedly read the letter with great interest and said that if what was written in it were true, he would have washed Muhammad's feet. The Negus of Abyssinia responded warmly. He had already seen the truth of this message years earlier. Khosrow of Persia, arrogant and dismissive, tore up the letter. When Muhammad heard this, he said quietly, "God will tear up his kingdom." Within a generation, the Sassanid Persian Empire had completely collapsed. These letters were not just correspondence, they were a declaration. This message is not only for Arabia, it is for all of humanity. The Quraysh were not finished. Humiliated by Badr, they returned the following year with an even larger force, 3,000 soldiers, including cavalry and archers. The Muslims marched out to meet them near a mountain called Uhud, just outside Medina. Muhammad positioned 50 archers on a hill with strict instructions: do not leave your positions no matter what happens. Whether we are winning or losing, stay at your posts. Initially, the battle went in favor of the Muslims. The Qurayshi forces began to retreat. And then a critical mistake. Many of the archers on the hill saw the enemy retreating and thought the battle was won. They abandoned their posts to collect the spoils of war. A Qurayshi cavalry commander named Khalid ibn al-Walid, who would later become one of the greatest generals in Islamic history, saw the hill empty and swept around with his cavalry, attacking the Muslims from the rear. The tide turned instantly. Muslims fell on all sides. A cry went out that Muhammad had been killed, and panic spread through the ranks. Muhammad had been wounded, a tooth was broken, his face was cut, but he was alive. He gathered around him a small group of companions who formed a human shield around their prophet. The battle ended in heavy Muslim losses. 70 were killed, including Muhammad's beloved uncle Hamza, who had been one of the greatest warriors of early Islam. It was a painful defeat. But in its aftermath, the Quran revealed verses about patience, trust in God, and learning from mistakes. Uhud was not just a military battle, it was a lesson in discipline, and its message is still studied by military commanders and scholars today. 2 years after Uhud, the Quraysh made their most ambitious move yet. They gathered a coalition of tribes, an army of nearly 10,000 fighters, and marched on Medina with the intention of finishing the Muslim community once and for all. Muhammad consulted his companions on how to defend the city. A Persian companion named Salman al-Farisi proposed an idea unheard of in Arabian warfare: dig a trench, a deep, wide ditch around the exposed northern side of Medina. The city's natural geography protected it on other sides. The Muslims dug. For weeks they worked, including Muhammad himself, who dug alongside everyone else, tied a stone to his belly to suppress his hunger. When a rock too hard to break was encountered, Muhammad struck it himself and sparks flew. He called out encouragement, joked with the workers, kept their spirits high. When the massive coalition arrived and found a trench blocking their path, they were bewildered. Horses could not cross it. The army camped on the other side for nearly a month, attempting skirmishes, but the trench held. As the weeks passed, the coalition began to fracture. Supplies ran low. Winds and storms disrupted their camps. Eventually, to the astonishment of the Muslim defenders, the great army simply disbanded and went home. Medina had survived without a major battle. It was a masterclass in strategic defensive warfare, and it marked the last time the Quraysh would launch an offensive against Medina. The tide was turning.
The Muslims who had migrated from Mecca were called the Muhajirin, the emigrants. They had left behind their homes, their businesses, their properties. Many had arrived in Medina with nothing but the clothes on their backs. The Muslims of Medina who had welcomed them were called the Ansar, the helpers. And what they did next is one of the most beautiful acts of generosity in recorded history. Muhammad established a system of brotherhood, pairing each emigrant with a helper. This was not a symbolic gesture, these were real bonds. A man of Medina would take his emigrant brother into his home, share his meals with him, give him a portion of his business, and treat him as family. One famous story, a helper named Saad ibn Rabi offered his emigrant brother Abdul Rahman ibn Auf half of everything he owned, even offered to give him one of his 2 wives in marriage. Abdul Rahman, touched beyond words, declined the personal offer, but asked only to be shown to the marketplace so he could start trading. Within a short time, Abdul Rahman ibn Auf had built a successful business from scratch, simply through his skill, his honesty, and his work ethic. This extraordinary generosity and brotherhood created a community unlike anything Arabia had seen before. Rich and poor, Arab and non-Arab, former master and former slave, all living as brothers. Islam was not a religion that shied away from the realities of the world. The Muslims in Medina faced genuine threats to their survival. The Quraysh had not given up. They had taken the property the emigrants left behind. They were plotting, conspiring, cutting off trade routes to Medina. Permission to fight in self-defense was revealed. Permission to fight is given to those who are being fought because they have been wronged, and indeed, God is capable of giving them victory. The first great military confrontation came in the 2nd year of the Hijra, 624 CE. A Qurayshi caravan led by Abu Sufyan was returning from Syria, rich with goods. The Muslims set out to intercept it, but Abu Sufyan got word and called for reinforcements from Mecca. A Qurayshi army of nearly 1,000 men marched out,
vastly outnumbering the Muslim force of just over 300. They met at a place called Badr. The battle was fierce but short. Despite being outnumbered more than 3 to 1, the Muslims won a stunning victory. 70 Qurayshi leaders were killed, including some of the chief persecutors of the early Muslims. 70 more were taken prisoner. The victory at Badr sent shockwaves across Arabia. The small community of Medina had stood up to the mighty Quraysh and won. The message was clear. This was not a movement that would quietly disappear. Muhammad treated the prisoners with extraordinary humanity. Many were later released in exchange for teaching Muslims to read and write, knowledge valued above gold.
News of the Aqaba pledge did not stay secret for long. The Quraysh were alarmed. They convened an emergency council, representatives from every major tribe in Mecca. The topic? What to do about Muhammad. They debated several options: exile, imprisonment. Then one man, Abu Jahl, proposed something final. Choose one young man from every tribe and have them strike Muhammad simultaneously. That way his blood would be spread across all tribes, and the Banu Hashim, Muhammad's own clan, would be unable to retaliate against everyone. The plan was set that very night. But Muhammad was informed, and he made his move. He asked his young cousin Ali to sleep in his bed, wrapped in his green cloak, so anyone watching the house would think he was still there. Then, as the assassins gathered outside his door, Muhammad slipped past them, reciting verses from the Quran, and they did not see him. He went to Abu Bakr's house. Together, they slipped out of Mecca in the dead of night and headed south, away from Medina to confuse any pursuers, toward a mountain called Thor, where they hid in a cave for 3 days. The Quraysh searched frantically. They even reached the mouth of the cave, but found a spider web covering the entrance and a bird's nest at the opening. Surely, they reasoned, no one could be hiding inside without disturbing these. Inside, Abu Bakr whispered, "If any of them looks down, they will see us." Muhammad replied calmly, "What do you think of 2 when God is their 3rd? After 3 days, they emerged and made their way north. On September 24th, 622 CE, the Prophet entered the outskirts of Medina. The people came out to greet him. Children climbed onto rooftops. Women sang songs of welcome. It was one of the most joyful moments in early Islamic history. When Muhammad arrived in Medina, the city was not a unified place. It was home to multiple Arab tribes, primarily the Aus or Khazraj, who had been fighting each other for generations. There were also significant Jewish communities, the Banu Kainuka, the Banu Nadir, and the Banu Qurayza, who had their own traditions, their own alliances, their own ways. Muhammad's first task was to build, not an army, not a palace, but a mosque, a place of worship and community. The spot where his camel stopped was purchased from 2 orphan boys for a fair price, and the entire community, including Muhammad himself, helped build it with their own hands. It was a simple structure of mud brick and palm tree trunks, with a canopy of palm leaves. But the mosque was more than a place of prayer. It was a school, a court of law, a community center, and a place of refuge. The second great task was the Charter of Medina, a remarkable document drawn up by Muhammad that is considered one of the earliest constitutional texts in human history. It established the rights and responsibilities of all the different communities in Medina, Muslim and non-Muslim alike. It stated that they were one community, that they would defend each other against attack, that each group could practice their own religion freely. It was a document of pluralism, extraordinary for its time. Muhammad was not just a religious leader, he was a statesman, and he was building a society. Shortly after the Year of Sorrow, in the depth of a Meccan night, something happened that has no parallel in human history, an event that Muslims call Al-Isra wal Miraj, the night journey and the ascension. One night, while Muhammad was near the Kaaba, the angel Gabriel appeared to him. A white creature, described as between a mule and a donkey in size, glowing with light, called Al-Barak, was brought to him. In a single miraculous night, Muhammad was taken from Mecca to Jerusalem to the Al-Aqsa site, a journey that would normally take a month by camel. In Jerusalem, he was met by the prophets, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and others, and he led them all in prayer. Then he ascended through the 7 heavens, meeting different prophets at each level. He was taken to a point beyond all human experience, a place called Sidrat al-Muntaha, the lote tree of the utmost boundary. There he received the direct command from God that his community would pray 50 times a day. On his descent,
Moses urged him to go back and negotiate. "Your followers cannot bear 50 prayers a day. I know from experience with the children of Israel." Muhammad returned again and again, and each time the number was reduced until it came to 5 daily prayers, with the reward of 50 preserved. When Muhammad described the night journey to the Quraysh the next morning, they laughed. "Impossible," they said. "A month's journey in a single night?" Those who had any doubt left the faith that morning. Those who truly believed, like Abu Bakr, accepted without question. Abu Bakr said simply, "If he said it, then it is true."
Another dimension of Muhammad's legacy that deserves careful attention is his approach to people of other faiths, particularly Jews and Christians, whom the Quran calls people of the book. The Charter of Medina, which Muhammad drafted, explicitly guaranteed the rights of the Jewish tribes of Medina to practice their own religion, manage their own internal affairs, and receive equal protection from outside attack. They were part of the same community, with mutual obligations. When delegations of Christians came to Medina, including a delegation from Najran, Muhammad allowed them to pray their own prayers inside his mosque. He sat with them, spoke with them, respected their faith, even while inviting them to consider Islam. He said, "Whoever harms a dhimmi, a non-Muslim under Muslim protection, has harmed me." When his cousin Jafar returned from Abyssinia, he brought a gift from the Christian Negus. Muhammad accepted it with gratitude and respect. He taught his followers, "You will not enter paradise until you believe, and you will not believe until you love one another. Shall I tell you of something that if you do it, you will love one another? Spread peace among yourselves." This did not mean there were no conflicts with Jewish or Christian groups during his life. There were, and they were complex, often rooted in political betrayals rather than pure religious difference. But the baseline, the foundational principle, was one of coexistence. Muhammad was not only a spiritual reformer, he was a social revolutionary whose changes to the economic and social fabric of Arabia were as radical as any revolution in history. He inherited a society built on slavery, tribal privilege, and the exploitation of the poor. He systematically dismantled each of these structures. He encouraged, and in many cases mandated, the freeing of slaves as an act of worship. He elevated the status of freed slaves. Bilal, the Ethiopian former slave who had been tortured for his faith, became the first person to call the Muslim community to prayer, his voice echoing over the rooftops of Medina. A freed slave, Zayd ibn Haritha, was given command of armies. Another freed slave, Salim, was a leading reciter of the Quran in Medina. He established the concept of zakat, mandatory charitable giving, as one of the 5 pillars of Islam. Wealth was not to accumulate in a few hands. It was to circulate, to feed the hungry, clothe the poor, support travelers in need, free those enslaved by debt. He abolished usury, interest on loans, which had been crushing the poor. He established rules of fair trade. He prohibited hoarding. He established that every Muslim had a duty to his neighbor, regardless of whether that neighbor was Muslim. These were not just moral instructions. They became law. They reshaped society in ways that can still be felt today. History gives us many leaders, warriors, and prophets. But what kind of man was Muhammad? Not as a title, but as a human being. Those who knew him personally described someone who is simultaneously awe-inspiring and deeply approachable. His companion, Anas ibn Malik, who served him for 10 years, said, "He never once said to me about something I had done, 'Why did you do that?' and about something I had not done, 'Why did you not do that?' He smiled often. He loved perfume. He enjoyed sweet things. He had a gentle sense of humor. He once told an old woman playfully that no old women would enter paradise, and then clarified that they would all be made young again. He would race with his wife Aisha. He would play with children. He sat with the poor. He visited the sick. He mended his own sandals. He sewed his own clothes. He milked his goats. He helped with household chores. He was seen sweeping the floor of his mosque. And yet, when he entered a room, people stood without being asked to. Not out of protocol, but out of an involuntary response to his presence. His companion Abu Huraira said, "I never saw anything more beautiful than the messenger of God." He was not a king who lived in a palace. At his death, his home had no furniture. His mattress was made of the bark of a date palm. His family sometimes went days without cooking a proper meal. He had access to the wealth of a growing empire and chose this.
One of the most profound aspects of Muhammad's mission, and one often misunderstood or ignored in modern discussions, was his treatment of women and the rights he gave them at a time when women in Arabia had almost no rights at all. Before Islam, women in Arabia could be inherited like property. Daughters were sometimes killed at birth. Women had no right to own property, to refuse marriage, or to divorce. Muhammad changed all of this, radically and within his own lifetime. He declared that women had the right to own property. He gave women inheritance rights, revolutionary for the 7th century. He stated clearly, a woman may only be married with her consent. He forbade the inheritance of women as property. He prohibited the killing of daughters. He elevated the status of mothers explicitly. When a man asked who deserved his best companionship, Muhammad replied, "Your mother." The man asked again, "Your mother," and again, "Your mother." Only on the 4th ask did he say, "Your father." He said, "The best of you are those who are best to their wives." And personally, he was devoted to Khadija, his first wife, for 25 years. He consulted his wives on important matters. He listened to Salama's advice during the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, and her counsel changed history. The greatest scholar of his companion's generation in many areas of religious knowledge was his wife Aisha.
Not long after returning from the farewell pilgrimage, Muhammad began to feel unwell. He developed a severe headache and a high fever, and his condition progressively weakened over the following weeks. Even while ill, he continued to lead the community as much as he could. But as the fever intensified, he asked for permission to spend his final days in the home of his wife Aisha, daughter of Abu Bakr. And it was there, in a small room attached to the mosque in Medina, that the Prophet of God would spend his last days on earth. He continued to come to the mosque when he could, but as he grew weaker, he appointed Abu Bakr to lead the prayers in his place. One day, feeling slightly better, he lifted the curtain from Aisha's room and looked out at Abu Bakr leading the prayers and the rows of believers praying behind him. He smiled, a smile that those who saw it said they would never forget. Then he let the curtain fall. In his final days, he had the habit of dipping his hand in water and wiping his face, saying, "There is no God but Allah. Death has its agonies." He repeatedly said, "With the highest companions, asking God for the highest station in the next life." He continued to give guidance until nearly his last breath. He said, "Prayer, prayer, and be righteous toward those your right hands possess," meaning treat people with justice. He said, "Do not make my grave an idol that is worshipped." He did not want to be deified. He was a man, an extraordinary man, but a man. On the morning of Monday, the 12th of Rabi al-Awwal, the same month and day on which he had been born, Muhammad, the messenger of God, passed away. He was 63 years old. Aisha, in whose arms he lay, later described the moment. His head rested on her lap. She felt him grow heavy, and then he was gone. In the same room, in the same city. He had come full circle. The news spread through Medina like lightning. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Umar ibn al-Khattab, the tough, fierce, unbreakable Umar, stood up in the mosque with his sword drawn and cried, "Whoever says that Muhammad is dead, I will strike him. He has not died. He has gone to his Lord as Moses went, and he will return." He was shaking. He could not accept it. It was Abu Bakr who quieted him. Abu Bakr entered, went to the Prophet's body, kissed his forehead, and then came out and stood before the crowd. He said, in words that have rung through history, "Whoever worshipped Muhammad, let them know that Muhammad has died. But whoever worships God, God is alive and will never die." Then he recited from the Quran, "Muhammad is not but a messenger. Other messengers have passed away before him. If he were to die or be killed, would you turn back on your heels? God will reward those who are grateful." Omar later said, "When I heard those verses, my legs gave way beneath me and I fell to the ground. Then I knew he was gone."
When the Quraysh violated the terms of the Treaty of Hudaybiyah by attacking a tribe allied with the Muslims, Muhammad prepared to march on Mecca. He gathered an army of 10,000 fighters, the largest Muslim force ever assembled, and set out toward the city that had persecuted him, expelled him, and tried to kill him for over 20 years. The Quraysh had no response to this force. Abu Sufyan, the longtime leader of Quraysh opposition to Muhammad, came out and accepted Islam before the army even reached the city gates. Muhammad told him, "Whoever enters Abu Sufyan's house is safe. Whoever closes his door is safe. Whoever enters the mosque is safe." The army entered Mecca in 4 columns, peacefully, with almost no bloodshed. Muhammad rode his camel, head bowed in humility, reciting from the Quran. He went straight to the Kaaba. He walked around it 7 times. He had the key to the Kaaba brought to him, and he entered it himself, clearing it of every idol, striking each one with his staff until they fell. He recited, "Truth has come and falsehood has departed. Indeed, falsehood is bound to depart." Then he stood at the door of the Kaaba and looked out at the vast crowd of Meccans who had gathered, many of them his former persecutors, people who had tortured his companions, people who had tried to assassinate him, people who had killed his family members. He looked at them and asked, "What do you think I will do with you?" They said, "We hope for kindness. You are a noble brother, son of a noble brother." He said, "I will say to you what Joseph said to his brothers. No blame will there be upon you today. God will forgive you, for he is the most merciful. Go, you are free." In the 10th year of the Hijrah, 632 CE, Muhammad performed the Hajj, the major pilgrimage to Mecca, for the first and only time since his migration. Over 100,000 people joined him. The entire Muslim community gathered in one place, a sea of white-clad pilgrims moving together. On the 9th day of the pilgrimage month, standing on the plain of Arafat, Muhammad delivered a sermon that would echo through the centuries. His voice was carried by relays of men across the vast plain so that everyone could hear. He began, "O people, listen carefully to what I say, for I do not know whether after this year I shall ever be among you again." He then outlined the foundations of a just society. "Your blood and your property are as sacred and inviolable as this day and this month. Every Muslim is the brother of every other Muslim. You are all equal. O people, your Lord is one. Your Father is one. There is no superiority of an Arab over a non-Arab, nor of a non-Arab over an Arab, nor of a white man over a black man, nor a black man over a white man, except through piety and good deeds. I have left among you 2 things. If you hold fast to them, you will never go astray: the book of God and the example of his prophet." He then looked up at the sky, the assembled multitude watching, and said, "O God, have I conveyed the message?" And the crowd thundered back, "Yes." He said, "Then bear witness, O God, bear witness." It was a farewell. He knew it.
The Prophet Muhammad is not only one of the most written about figures in Islamic tradition, he is one of the most written about human beings in all of history. And remarkably, many of the most striking assessments of his life and impact have come from non-Muslim historians, thinkers, and scholars. The historian Michael Hart, in his book Ranking the Most Influential People in History, placed Muhammad at number 1. His reasoning? Muhammad was supremely successful in both the religious and secular dimensions of human life, something no other figure in history had achieved at the same scale. The French writer Alphonse de Lamartine wrote that if greatness of purpose, smallness of means, and extraordinary results are the 3 criteria of human genius, who could dare to compare any great man in modern history with Muhammad? Mahatma Gandhi wrote that he became more interested in the man when he read about his life. He said that it was not the sword that won a place for Islam in the world. It was the simplicity, the self-effacement, and the scrupulous regard for pledges of the Prophet. George Bernard Shaw wrote that if Muhammad were alive today, he would succeed in solving the problems of the modern world, and that he must be called the savior of humanity. These are not the words of believers. They are the conclusions of people who examined the historical record honestly and found a man who stands apart from all others. And so we reach the end of our journey. 40 chapters, 14 centuries, one extraordinary human life. What is the final lesson of the Prophet Muhammad's life? Perhaps it is this, that the most powerful force in human history is not an army, not a throne, not a treasure vault. It is a man or woman of genuine character, truthful, just, compassionate, and brave, who refuses to give up on their message. Muhammad began with nothing, an orphan, no wealth, no army, no political power. He was mocked, driven out, threatened with death. He lost his wife, he lost his children, he lost his friends. He was pelted with stones at Taif. He was blockaded for 3 years and nearly starved. And yet, he never turned bitter. He never sought revenge for personal harm. He never lost his kindness toward ordinary people. He kept going, one step, one day, one word, one conversation at a time. The world that existed before him, Arabia in 570 CE, was a world of tribal warfare, idol worship, buried daughters, and enslaved human beings. The world after him, within a single generation, was transformed. A civilization that would preserve the knowledge of ancient Greece while Europe was in the Dark Ages. A civilization that gave the world algebra, astronomy, medicine, philosophy, and architecture. One man, 23 years. A message that reached from the Atlantic coast to the borders of China within a century of his death. And today, 1.8 billion people on every continent of this earth answer the call to prayer 5 times a day in the language he spoke, repeating words he said. That is not the legacy of a man who failed. That is the story of one of the greatest human beings who ever lived.
Muhammad lived in a world of war. Arabia in the 7th century was defined by tribal conflict, and he led his community through dozens of military campaigns over the final 10 years of his life. So it is essential to understand what he said and what he actually practiced about the ethics of warfare. Before every expedition, he would give his commanders a specific set of instructions. Among them, do not betray, do not be treacherous, do not mutilate the dead, do not kill children. He added, do not kill women, do not kill old men, do not cut down trees, do not destroy churches. He prohibited torture, he prohibited the killing of non-combatants. He established that prisoners of war were to be treated well and fed. He demonstrated this himself with the prisoners of Badr, ordering his companions to share their own food with the captives. After the conquest of Mecca, when he had 10,000 warriors at his command, and the city that had persecuted him for 20 years lay at his feet, he gave an amnesty so broad it included even his most personal enemies. Not because he was weak, but because mercy was a greater victory than revenge. 14 centuries later, international humanitarian law, the Geneva Conventions, the rules of armed conflict, would codify principles that Muhammad had taught to illiterate desert warriors in the 7th century. Of all the legacies Muhammad left behind, the most enduring, the most studied, the most memorized, the most influential is the Quran. Over 23 years, verses of the Quran were revealed to Muhammad in stages, addressing the needs and circumstances of the growing Muslim community. Muhammad could not read or write, but he had companions dedicated specifically to writing down every verse as it was revealed. He would also recite the revelations to his companions, who memorized them in extraordinary numbers. By the time of his death, the Quran had been memorized in full by hundreds of companions. Shortly after his death, the first crossed the Muslim world. That text, every single word of it, is the same text read by 1.8 billion Muslims today. No other book in history has been memorized by more human beings. Millions of Muslims, from Indonesia to Morocco to Nigeria to Canada, can recite its 114 chapters, 6,236 verses, from memory. The Quran's literary quality, in Arabic, is considered by Arabic scholars, even non-Muslim ones, to be of extraordinary beauty and power. Its challenge remains open. Produce something comparable. 14 centuries have passed. The challenge stands unanswered. O Allah, send your blessings upon Muhammad and upon the family of Muhammad, as you sent blessings upon Ibrahim and the family of Ibrahim. Indeed, you are praiseworthy and glorious. If you gained any knowledge or inspiration from this video, please like this video, leave a comment with your thoughts, and share it with your friends and family. And make sure to subscribe to Global Legends Studio so you never miss the next part of this incredible story. See you in the next video, inshallah.